Heads up to everyone that I am recording this session. If you would like a copy of the recording, please shoot me an email afterwards. I don't know if it'll be sent out automatically. Happy to share it with you. However, the slides that I'm showing are not going to be available, so only the recorded version of the session, but not the PowerPoint itself. I'm using a lot of videos and photos that have been provided to me by partners within the industry. If you have interesting applications or photos or videos that you would like to share that I can maybe put into the next generation of this presentation that I give theoretically all over the world, but on webinars like this as well, please feel free to shoot those videos and photos over to me, and I'll make sure that you're credited for providing them. Let's see, a few other things. There is a question box. Please feel free to shoot questions in there throughout the presentation. I'm not sure how much time that we'll have to do the actual question and answer session at the end, but I do promise that I will answer every question that I'm sent, either via email to everyone, or if it's an individual personal question, I'll send you a personal email, but I will answer every question that is posed there. Let's see, I think that's about it. So basically today I'm going to be showing you some real-life instances of how aerial thermal imaging is impacting the industrial space. You know, there's millions of drones sold each year, and tens of thousands of users are putting them to work commercially. And so basically I thought that it'd be a good idea to bring everyone together and show how these products are being used in what environments, and maybe it'll give you, you know, that aha moment where it either clicks, or you know, you can explain it better to your customers, or you know, give you another opportunity on how to use your aerial technology. So a quick background on me. I'm the global sales manager for the UAS division at FLIR. My path within the drone industry has been pretty unique, starting in spring of 2014. I co-founded possibly the first drone retail location in the world, starting with a small investment, working with the majority of drone manufacturers that were around at the time. Grew a business to something that was quite successful at the time, and then in October of 2015, I joined DJI, and while I was there for about a year and a half, pioneered the enterprise division in North America. And then 3 months ago, at the start of February, I joined FLIR, and over that course of time, I'd worked with, you know, countless Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, probably dozens of public safety entities, drone service providers, dealers, and thousands of end users. So I have the privilege of having that unique perspective of the industry, where I've been funneled all this information and seen a lot of things, and I enjoy providing that feedback and that perspective to others within the industry. Keep in mind, I'm not a thermographer, but I do have a passion for this industry and pushing this technology forward. So with that being said, I just want to know a little bit about who is here with us today. So I'm going to put up a few polls just so I can get an idea of who I'm presenting to. So the first question is, how much experience do you have with drones? So if you could just click on there what your current experience is, so we can see if I'm talking to some pros or if I'm talking to newbies. Leave this up for just a minute. Okay, so we have about 80% of people have responded now. Most of them are using them professionally, but we do have quite a bit of amateurs and beginners, and some even with no experience. So it is pretty spread across the board, but for the most part, it's people that do understand at least the basics of operating drones. So thank you for answering that. Now, what is your current experience with thermal imaging? And this could be aerial thermal imaging, ground thermal imaging, just what do you know about thermal? And I know that I do have a handful of experts on the webinar, and you guys, whenever I saw you guys register, makes me the most nervous, because you know, I'm not doing this day to day, going out and doing thermography, and so I'm sure there's some things that you could clarify or present better. So please mind me trying my best on this side, but for the most part, we have more of a beginner crowd. Beginner and no experience makes up well over the majority with some amateurs. So this is going to be more of a basic thing. I am going to be showing things that even experts might have never seen before, but yeah, it's not like I'm going to be delving too deeply into the technical details of thermal imaging. But thank you for responding to that. Now, I want to know what kind of organizations that you represent. So, are you involved in the drone industry as a dealer or service provider? Are you a fire department or police department? If you represent a small business that is operating drones yourself, large corporations, or if you just are an enthusiast representing yourself in this webinar. I'll leave this up until I get into the 80 percentile range, which seems is pretty typical for responses. It does look like most are small businesses. We do have a lot of public entities, which I did see a lot of registrations from fire and public safety, law enforcement, and then dealers and drone service providers are a little larger. But cool, very good. And then the last question that I want to ask before we get going forward is, where are you located right now? So not necessarily where you live all the time, but where are you today? I just want to see if we got full coverage. I think that we had registrations from 6 continents, and it looks like we do have some people in Asia and Pacific, so some in Australia and China, I know for sure. Some from Japan, tons, quite a bit in Europe. I think Spain went crazy for over the last 2 days, and there's so many people that registered from Spain, so I was really happy to see that. And then the majority, 71%, are in the US and Canada. Cool. So now I have that covered. Thanks again for being a part of this. Let's get to the actual presentation. So this is the very, very, very basic stuff about thermal imaging. I won't read many slides. I won't, detail what you can already see yourself, but this is one slide that I will be doing that. So infrared is considered a non-invasive, non-contact way to measure temperature. So you don't actually have to touch something, and that's why aerial thermal imaging makes so much sense. Thermal imaging is unaffected by visible light, so you can see in complete darkness. Even in the darkest cave, you would see the same way that you would see, out on a bright sunny day. With thermal imaging, you're able to see through obscurance, like smoke and fog, which is also a huge benefit. You're able to identify people and animals. And then when you're looking at the thermal image, what you're seeing is a visual representation of the radiation that is coming off or being emitted by the objects in the scene. But the color that you're seeing, or the image that's being shown, is really relative. The colors are relative to what else is in the scene. So something that is, if you're looking at white hot, the hottest thing in the scene might be white, but if you added something hotter to the scene, now that same object might be a gray or a darker shade. So the colors do not represent temperature, but they represent what else is within the scene relative, and have differences to about 0.05 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's also some misconceptions about thermal imaging. You're not able to see through glass, you're not able to see through walls, you're not able to see through clothing. This would just be the temperature or the radiation that's being emitted from these things is all that you're able to see. And thermal imaging, unlike regular cameras, high resolution is considered the 640 by 480 resolution. So you're not talking in megapixels. So the quality of an aerial thermal image really is broken down to a number of factors. Now, again, what the camera is doing is measuring the radiation, but then it can also take in a bunch of other factors to actually give you that temperature reading. So the drone itself is kind of just the vehicle that's carrying it, but does not really impact the way that the image is being measured, but the camera specifications definitely do. We'll go quite deep into camera specifications later on, but that is one important factor to the quality of the image. The next largest portion, or the next largest factor to the quality of the image, is going to be the emissivity or the reflectivity of the subject. Now, the reason that this is so important is because each surface radiates energy in a different way. And so when you have objects made of aluminum, for instance, it's very reflective. So really all you're seeing is the temperature of whatever is reflecting off of that aluminum. Where if you have something like brick or ice, that's very emissive, and so you're actually getting a true temperature reading of that subject. The angle that the camera is pointed is another factor into the quality of the image. The background temperature, like the sky or the clouds, can impact it, the distance from the subject, and also the atmosphere, whether you have high humidity or things like that. That's also going to play into the quality of the image. So the benefits of aerial thermal imaging can be broken down. I've broken them down into 3 categories. The first is this unique vantage point, this bird's eye view that you really couldn't get otherwise unless you had a manned aircraft like a helicopter. Helicopters can be not only expensive, but they're not as flexible. You could get drones into pretty tight spaces and get this unique vantage point. Now, the safety benefits of aerial thermal imaging are broken down into 2 categories. First of all, with heights, you no longer need to climb up on power poles or ladders or on high-pitched roofs to get that information. You could get it from the ground in a safe environment, and only you would need to climb up if to make repairs or to address the situation. But to make assessments, you could do that from a safe environment. And then the environment portion of that is that using aerial thermal imaging, you don't need to traverse through rough terrain. You also can keep personnel from operating in areas where there's heavy machinery, such as in mining and construction. So that's another safety benefit. And then the efficiency benefits, if using aerial thermal imaging, you're able to cut down the time of doing the inspection. There's obvious benefits there. But you could also increase the yields of, say, a crop using aerial thermal imaging. You can increase the output of a solar field. Or you can increase the longevity of infrastructure by doing repeated inspections and having this technology, putting this technology to work. So today I'm going to be talking about a number of different industrial applications. So I don't mean to read through these, but public safety, I'll go through law enforcement, firefighting, and search and rescue. Transportation, largely related to the railroads, surveillance, agriculture, which I'll talk about, farming and ranching, utilities, both power line and solar, roof inspections, oil and gas archaeology, and wildlife preservation. So it doesn't take aerial thermal imaging to tell you that this building here is on fire. But what's interesting here is that this video can be sent back to a command and control center, where an expert can make decisions on how best to approach fighting the fire, or whether they need to send out more units to adequately fight it, or if they need to send out specialized equipment. Now keep in mind, this video is being captured while not having a cameraman in the way or putting themselves in a dangerous place. And this video can also be used for training purposes in real-life environments. So these are some of the benefits that you can find in firefighting alone. So I'm going to jump to another video, and you can see on the right hand side there's a hotspot that's right under that tree, and we'll get back to that. But using this aerial perspective, when firefighters are generally fighting a structure fire, they'll cut ventilation holes within the roof. In a second this will tilt down and you'll be able to see one. So here's a ventilation hole, and the reason they do that is so that it allows smoke and other toxic gases to be released through the roof, so it makes it easier to fight the fire from within. So here you can see 2 firefighters cutting another ventilation hole, and again, this video can be sent back to the command and control center, where someone can first of all see the progress of cutting these ventilation holes. They can ensure the safety of the firefighters that are on the roof, make sure that nothing has happened to them and that everything is going as planned. They can assess techniques. They can also use this for training purposes to make sure that the next firefighter that's supposed to go up there and cut knows what they're doing. And again, the drone operator goes back to this spot that's on the right-hand side, and that's because to the naked eye, the shingles would not look like there's any problem underneath. But you can see that the heat is starting to penetrate the roof, and they can go and address this situation before it becomes a bigger problem that they wouldn't be able to see otherwise. In this third video of firefighting, the structure was all completely damaged, but they flew the drone above and looked straight down, and they noticed that there's hot pockets, or the heat was being trapped within the walls. And so they sent firefighters in to break them down to make sure that this is a safe environment for those that are walking through, whether it's the insurance adjusters, law enforcement, other firefighters, or the homeowners themselves. Now they've reduced the likelihood of reignition and also made it a safer environment to operate. There are more than 30,000 fire departments in the United States alone, and they're responding to a call about once every 22 seconds. And so any technology that can be added to firefighting to increase the safety and also to reduce the loss of property is well worth investment. So that covers firefighting. So now I'll jump into law enforcement. Law enforcement is using drones in a multitude of ways, but the videos are not always the easiest to get a hold of. Here we have a canine training unit. They had sent out an officer to hide in this this high-growth area. It was probably about a quarter mile out, and the drone located them instantly because it could go through that terrain quite easily, and it's also using isotherm, which allows you to set a parameter of temperatures, in this case probably 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and everything that falls within that parameter will pop out on the screen. They locate the person, they shine maybe some lights on them, and then in a second we'll see that the dog also found them. Let this play through. Okay, so here's another video, somewhat similar, but basically they fly the drone over, and you can see behind that wall, in between the wall and a tree, the subject is there. So the pilot's able to radio over and tell the officers that they've located someone and where they're at. So it can save them time, and also they're able to identify how many people are there, if they have maybe weapons, or if they seem like they're in an attacking position or posture. And after they radio over, they're able to then deploy officers over to address the situation. This increases the safety for these officers in a very clear manner, I guess. And keep in mind, there's no cameraman hovering around, so you're able to document these situations using this unique vantage point without putting someone else at risk. And it could be used as evidence in a crime case. And they could also use it for training in the future. All right. So search and rescue is probably the most highly demanded use for aerial thermal imaging. Because most instances occur in areas where there's rough terrain or very remote, the drone can move through these areas at quite high speeds and not be encumbered by the rough terrain. You're also able to see in complete dark. You're able to see through canopies of trees, and you'd be able to locate people quite easily. According to the work of Romeo Dersher at DJI and some others, since 2013, it's recorded that 59 lives have been saved using consumer drones, and 38 of these have occurred within the past 10 months. So we're seeing a huge influx of the use in search and rescue, and it's probably the most clear-cut application for aerial thermal imaging because it has such huge advantages over search parties on the ground. So next I'm going to touch on transportation. There are more than 850,000 miles of train track around the world. That's enough to circle the Earth 212 times. The U.S. makes up about 20% of these railroad tracks, and drones are being used in some cases to potentially identify mechanical issues. They're being used to inspect critical infrastructure30 as communication towers and bridges. But their most important use is for providing surveillance. There's more than $30 billion of cargo stolen from trains in the U.S. alone. And this leads not only to higher prices to the consumer, but it also leads to a likelihood of fatality or injuries caused by train because they're moving around without knowing that there's people operating within in that area. So surveillance is a huge benefit to the rails and looking into areas of where there's what are they called? Train car. Can't even think of the word. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, stockyards for trains. Anyway, so let's jump into surveillance. This video here shows someone jumping over a fence and hiding in different places of this gated community area. This was not an actual person invading this area, but was for demonstration purposes. But in some cases, drones are being deployed automatically or autonomously when something crosses through a designated perimeter. So if you set a perimeter around, say, a large corporate campus, or in some cases seaports, the drone would launch automatically, go to where the person is, and this documents not only their point of entry, but also if they've gone into any buildings, what building they went into, and how many people were with them. So this increases the safety of the security provider because they know what they're getting themselves into before entering into the scene. So this, the autonomy of it can provide a significant level of security beyond what you could get without aerial thermal imaging. So in agriculture, this is still really being worked out as far as how you could use aerial thermal imaging. In this case, a professor and an agronomist at Kansas State captured images of a wheat field during the mid-season. So if you know anything about large, dense, high-growth crops like corn or wheat, they're very difficult to navigate. So what they've done here is they've flown above and taken images to determine where there's water being captured in the soil. Water in soil is very heavily correlated to the amount of crop yields that you're able to get. So the lighter areas in the bottom right are going to be areas where there's less water within the soil, and this could be caused by either a broken watering system or poor irrigation, where the darker areas are going to be where there's more water held in the soil. With images like this, the agronomists can then make a management plan mid-season on how they can address the situation and increase the farmer's output or yield by the end of the season. In this image here, this is a photo of cattle about a half-mile away. So for ranching purposes, you would be able to locate the herd more easily, even at night. You could locate strays, you could potentially identify predators, and you could count stock, and this is all being done without disturbing the animals. In the third example here, oh, there's some sound. It's coming through my headphones, sorry. Even the best growing season can be ruined by unwanted crop invaders. Here we're looking at wild hogs. This video shows pretty quickly that you can identify these wild hogs, and then the landowner can be sent over there to deal with them or prevent them from entering the property quite easily. I'll play that through again. This was actually on a peanut farm, and hogs they can destroy an entire peanut farm in like 2 days. So they have to address this quite quickly. And using aerial thermal imaging is how they were doing it here. Okay, so talking about utilities, admittedly, this is not the best image to illustrate the point, but the use of drones to inspect power lines and substations is probably the second most popular use of aerial thermal imaging. Even with the efforts of OSHA and other safety organizations around the world, power line inspection continues to be one of the most dangerous occupations in the world. It leads to hundreds of deaths and injuries each year in the US alone. Globally, it's probably in the thousands. The drone allows you to get up close and personal with these components that could be potentially failing, and then the technician is only exposed to that danger after they've actually identified a problem. Drone manufacturers and service providers and also software companies are trying to make power line inspection more and more autonomous with drones, which would significantly improve the speed that they're able to do these inspections, increase the efficiency, and also provide a huge safety benefit. For solar energy is becoming more and more prevalent throughout the years. China is the largest consumer of solar energy, followed by Germany, Japan, the United States, and Italy. And in solar farms, they can range from between 1 to 100 acres of land and can consist of hundreds or thousands or even millions of solar panels. Currently today, these solar farms are being inspected about once every 6 months, and they basically just drive a truck up and down the rows with a boom and a thermal imaging camera, And this is not only very inefficient as far as the amount of time that it takes, but it's also pretty inaccurate. So using drones, the operator could potentially draw the perimeter of the area that they want to inspect, and it could go through and fly autonomously, capturing these images and creating an orthomosaic or thousands of images stitched together into one map. And then the farm could be inspected by someone at a desk in an air-conditioned office rather than being done on site, which can take up to 2 weeks in some cases. You could be then increasing the iterations or the amount of times that you're doing these inspections, which ultimately will increase the output of the solar farm. So this is one very clear way that aerial thermal imaging is being used in a very positive way. In this case, you can see the defective area on this black and gray image. This was caused by a broken junction box and wouldn't have been identified. Could potentially be 6 months before they would have noticed, and it's a pretty quick fix and was able to resolve that issue. This is a very quick video about roof inspection. So this is a building that's about 100 feet high, and you can get a full idea of the roof in a very quick amount of time. The area that you're seeing the anomalies is where water had penetrated the deck of the roof and needed to be replaced. So without having a person climbing up on the roof and give this aerial perspective, roofing and building inspection is being impacted with aerial thermal imaging. Oil and gas is a pretty highly demanded use case for aerial thermal imaging. It hasn't all been panned out. I think the idea is at the end of the day, they would like to be able to autonomously fly thousands of miles of pipelines that are in pretty remote and pretty harsh areas of the world and be able to look for leaks. But you can see here that the shutoff valve is working, and there's a gradient which is caused by the gases being cooled down within the pipe. And then as the drone pulls out, you're able to see the entire network or the entire refinery, and in theory, if there was a problem, you would be able to identify it pretty quickly using aerial thermal imaging and go address it quicker. Once this does become an automated process, we'll see probably hundreds or thousands of drones being deployed in the oil and gas space. They're also being used currently for offshore oil rig inspections in some cases. Okay, so my next thing is about archaeology, and I don't know how well the sound's going to work, but I'm going to be playing video and sound through my computer, and then it's going to be picked up by the microphone. So if you can't hear anything, I apologize, but there was no way for me to test it beforehand.
I got an idea.
Doesn't look like you guys can hear this at all. Okay, so in apologies to my buddy Andy that let me use this video. Oh my goodness, things are popping up everywhere. I can tell you for sure that the pilot of the drone was definitely not shown in this video. You can see that the operator here is using a Ronin controller and a tablet stuck on the antenna to to identify what's being flown with the Zenmuse XT. So I know that the pilot wasn't shown in this video, and I can't guarantee whether the structure was actually identified using the drone, but the concept is still the same, where throughout the day the temperature of the ground heats and cools in different ways. And if you're looking at dry soil versus an area where there's rocks, buried stones, or treasure underneath, the temperature would potentially look differently. So the archaeologists can then plan their dig around what they captured from this aerial thermal image. In wildlife preservation, here Ocean Alliance is using drones and thermal imaging capabilities to better understand whales. They're using their SnotBot, which can be seen in the bottom left-hand corner, which has basically a petri dish on the top of it, and as the whale spouts from its blowhole, it's collecting these samples that could be used to get information that they otherwise couldn't get from a whale, and this is all being done without disturbing the whale. They're using aerial thermal imaging to determine the size and also the direction the whale is moving at night, because it's pushing down cold water, pushing up cold water to the surface, and they're able to determine its direction. They're also using radiometric versions of the cameras to measure the temperature of the whale's breath, which otherwise they weren't able to get that data collection. So these are all new points of data that can be used to better understand whales in environments where either environmental changes or poaching is decimating the number of whales species in the ocean. Speaking of poaching, this is from SkyIMD and OASA Conservation. They used the FLIR View Pro on a Cessna, so I know this is an unmanned situation, but the concept's still the same, where they're flying over the jungles of Costa Rica looking for jaguar poachers. And what they're trying to find is when poachers are out in the forest, they create cooking fires, and when you identify cooking fires, they can then send this information into law enforcement to track their movements and also to potentially prosecute them. So this is another application where aerial thermal imaging is huge, because you can go undetected, it can increase the safety, and also preserve the amount of wildlife in nature. So I also wanted to touch on orthomosaics a bit more. I mentioned them when I was talking about solar panels or solar fields, but here Spark Aerial did an orthomosaic, which is thousands of thermal images stitched together of a volcano in Nicaragua. And the reason that this is cool is on the image you could hover over any pixel and you could see the actual temperature of that portion. So geologists can use this to potentially predict the next eruption, or see if the volcano has grown, see if it's changing over time. And this is all being done with aerial thermal images and orthomosaics. Now, orthomosaics could also be used for solar fields, as I mentioned before, potentially for farms. You could use it for the roofs of the large corporate campuses. These are just some of the ways, but this is all, the industry is still evolving, and it's really the ingenuity of the user to find new applications like this volcano. So these are the products that FLIR has in the UAS space. You have the FLIR Duo, the FLIR View Pro, and the Zenmuse XT, which is in partnership with DJI. The Zenmuse XT is the only one of these products that does not require last mile integration. It's the only one that's compatible with the airframe as a plug-and-play unit, but it is limited to the DJI Inspire 1, the DJI Matrice 100, the 200 series, and also the Matrice 600. For those that want thermal imaging on, say, a Phantom, Inspire 2, or another manufacturer's airframes, that's when you would go with the FLIR View Pro or the FLIR Duo. Now, the FLIR Duo is a low-cost GoPro form factor, which has both an RGB and a 160 by 120 thermal imaging camera on board. The lens is fixed, and you're also, with that lower resolution, you might only want to use this in areas where detection capabilities are required, but not necessarily identification, which we'll discuss shortly. For the FLIR View Pro and the Zenmuse XT, there's a variety of options that I'll walk you through, different lenses and configurations, and so you could really determine which camera would be best for your personal application. So these are the configurations that are available, differences in resolution, frame rate, lens sizes, and also their radiometric capabilities. I do think that it is a mistake to get too wrapped up in these decisions, because I think the questions that you have to ask yourself are pretty simple. So I just made a quick list of what questions you might ask yourself, and I'll provide these now, but you could think about it later. Really, you need to ask yourself, what is my usual application? How big is the subject that I'm trying to identify as far as its size? What country do I live in, and where will I be operating this camera? How close to the subject am I able to fly? What is my budget? And then do I need to know the exact temperature of the object? So we'll delve into these a bit further, but those are some of the questions to keep in mind. As mentioned before, 640 by 512 is considered high resolution in the thermal imaging world. With this camera, you're getting about over 300,000 pixels within a single image. But when you're working with thermal imaging, it's important to capture a subject within about a 10 by 10 pixel cluster within the image. That's going to give you the best results and the best identification of that. So just keep this in mind as well as we move forward. So resolution is the factor that carries the largest difference within price. Depending on your application, you may require just detection or just recognition or identification of the object. So when your camera is able to detect something, then the blob that you're seeing is you have a reasonable probability that it is the object that you're looking for. So let's say that in one case, if you're able to detect something, you might detect that something is a vehicle, and that's pretty much it. You don't know what kind of vehicle, just that there is a vehicle with detection. However, with lower resolution cameras like the FLIR Duo, there's also MSX imaging enhancement, which blends the RGB image with the thermal image to make details pop out a little bit more, so it's not looking just like a blob. So when you look at recognition, you're able to then discern between different classes of objects. So instead of just saying, with detection that there's a vehicle, you're able to determine whether it's a car or a truck or a bus or a tank or a motorcycle through recognition. Now, if you're able to identify the object, then you're able to discern between different types of that object within that class. So you might be able to determine not only is it a car, but it's a Honda Civic or a Jeep Renegade. Here is another example of where resolution can be seen and how you can determine whether low resolution or high resolution would be useful for you. Keep in mind that this 80 by 60 resolution is not of the FLIR Duo, which is 160 by 120, but this is just to give you a stark contrast of what different resolutions would look like within these cameras. And here is the difference between a 336 and a 640 ZenMUSE XT. And for the most part, both images are quality. You can see the biggest difference in the person that's standing in the background in the clarity. And I don't know how these things are being shown over webinar, because it might be a little bit more pixelated. I know that some of the videos were jumping a bit more than they should, but hopefully you can see the difference between the person here and the person here. That one is slightly blurrier. So when you're talking about lens configurations, the FLIR Duo is a fixed lens that gives you about a 57-degree field of view on the thermal and a 90-degree field of view on the RGB. But the FLIR View Pro and the ZenMUSE XT comes with a variety of options, and these lenses are fixed. They're not interchangeable. So the field of view comes down to how much you can see in the scene at any given time versus how much detail you're getting of the subject. Here you can see the comparison of a man walking and how the 19mm on the right-hand side provides a much clearer image, but it almost has a soda straw effect where you're only seeing a very small amount of what's going on around them. I'll be talking about this in a little bit more detail shortly, but at the top you can see the field of view, how it changes from different lenses and different resolutions. I'm going to touch on radiometry quite briefly, and this is some of the more technical stuff, but radiometric cameras have become kind of a buzzword within the drone industry as of late, and really this really comes down to whether you need to know the actual temperature of what you're looking at versus just the relative temperature of something that might be an anomaly or hotter than it should be, or than similar objects around it. So thermal imaging cameras measure the radiation in the long wave band, And through thermography, you're able to estimate what the temperature of the surface is. As mentioned earlier, you take into things like the environment, the emissivity, the background temperature, etc., to get that really accurate temperature. Generally, you're able to get a temperature accuracy of about plus minus 5 degrees. But again, if you're able to get the subject in about a 10 by 10 cluster of within the image, pixels within the image, is going to be where you're going to start getting the best results. Now, radiometric cameras will provide temperature data for every pixel within the image. As you can see on this image on the left, the colors actually represent a temperature where you're not getting that with the non-radiometric cameras. It's only showing relative temperature to other things within the scene. I hope that was all made sense. So export of these cameras is also a pretty big deal, and this is where you would determine whether you would have a 9 hertz or a 30 hertz version of the camera. The U.S. Department of Commerce restricts the exports of these many thermal imaging cameras throughout different parts of the world. So a list of the countries that are able to carry 30 hertz units is shown in yellow here. If you take a camera from one country outside into another country, whether you're using it or not is considered export, or whether you sell it into that country is considered an export. And doing so could result in a significant fine or in some cases imprisonment. So take these things very seriously. If you are in one of the countries in blue or on the list, you know, if you're going to take it out of your country, definitely make sure that you understand what country you're taking into and what their regulations are. But in most cases, a 9 hertz version you could take anywhere. And if you want to see the difference between a 9 hertz and a 30 hertz camera, I have a link here, and I'm going to put it in the chat section. And I hope that you guys will be able to see it. But take your, you could look at this now, or you could look at it later on your own time. But I do suggest that you see what the difference is between a 9 hertz and a 30 hertz. Basically, the 9 hertz is going to be a jumpier, staggered video, where the 30 hertz will be more smooth. And that video is provided by John Palmieri at OEM Camera, so I appreciate that he allowed me to use that to illustrate that point. So the price of the camera varies largely on resolution and also largely on integration. So this is just a quick graph to show you what the difference is in price you'd pay. We have on the low end the FLIR Duo, which starts at $1,000 US. Again, you're getting 160 by 120 resolution. You do have the optical capabilities on board as well, but you do have to do that last mile integration, and I'll talk about integration on the next slide. But when you're moving up to the 336 and 640 levels of the View Pro, you're paying in between $2,000 to $4,500 US. But when you jump up to the fully integrated Zenmuse XTs, you're looking in between around $6,500 to $10,000. For radiometric versions, even more. So this kind of illustrates the variety of choices that you have. So when it comes to integration, when you buy a FLIR Duo or a FLIR View Pro, you're just buying the thermal imaging camera. You're not necessarily buying an entire solution. So in order to get the camera to fly and send back imagery, there's a few things that can be pretty painstaking in getting that set up if you're not experienced in doing so. The nice thing about these units are they're lower cost than, say, the Zenmuse XT, and they allow you flexibility to work on different systems. Also, if you wanted to take it off and create a land-based system, you could do that as well. But to get to the level of the Zenmuse XT, you would need to stabilize the camera with a gimbal system. You'd need to provide some sort of downlink through a transmitter, and this could, there are cases where you could do it through, say, Lightbridge 2, but these take much more time to get to that level of integration. And so really it is a best practice to get these things from a value-added reseller rather than doing it yourself. I think that you know, someone that is pretty confident in working with electrical engineering could figure it out in a decent or a decently short amount of time. Also, if you have experience with FPV, it definitely reduces the time. But there are experts that are doing this on a day-to-day basis, and it's generally just better to get it from one of them. That's just my opinion. So I want to explain some application purposes, how you would select your camera. And as I was setting this up, I knew I was going to regret trying to explain it this way, but it's what I have, so I'm going to go for it. So here I've created images to show the difference between looking straight down on an image on the left, and whether you're looking at an angle, and 30-degree angle is kind of the sweet spot in aerial thermal imaging. So there's often the question of how high should I fly to get the proper image or to achieve the goal. So in this case, I'm going to talk about maybe a search and rescue application where you're trying to locate a person. And I'm trying to illustrate here that a person standing up looks very different straight down than a person standing up at a 30-degree angle. Also, a person sitting down and a person laying down looks very different from these perspectives. And the white squares are supposed to represent a 10 by 10 pixel 10 by 10 pixel cluster that is best to identify a subject. So it's a lot easier to get a 10 by 10 pixel cluster at an angle than it is for something from straight down, but I'll show you why I'm explaining it like this. But the one assumption I am making is that we'll call a person a 2 by 2 foot, takes up a 2 by 2 foot space. And this could be argued, but that's just what I'm setting as a standard as I go forward to these next graphs. So what these graphs are showing is either a Zenmuse XT or a FLIR View Pro, 336 resolution and 640 resolution. And I'm assuming that a person looking straight down covers a 2 by 2 foot space on the ground, which then is translated to when you're flying a certain height and you have a certain lens on these cameras, this is where you'll find a 2 foot space to fall within the 10 by 10 pixel range. So you can see that a 9mm lens on a 336, you're able to fly about 75 feet in the air to identify a 2 by 2 foot object that would cover 10 pixels in 10 by 10 pixel cluster. I hope that all makes sense, but I really think these graphs are very telling and answering a lot of questions that have come out of aerial thermal imaging. And I do want to thank Gary Orlov from the ITC of providing these, but I tried to boil it down to make it make sense. So for a 336 resolution, you're able to fly 75 feet with a 9mm, about 100 feet with a 13mm, and 150 feet with a 19mm. But that is going to impact the amount of field of view, which I'll get into shortly, that you're seeing within each image. Now, with the 640 resolution, you're basically getting the same with a 9mm as far as how high you can fly, but you're able to get about 125 feet for 13mm, 13mm, and nearly 200 feet with a 19mm. Now, this is looking straight down. This is at a 0-degree tilt. Now, when we look at a 30-degree tilt, you're able to increase, it increases everything as far as how high you can fly and identify that person. So for a 9mm, you're able to get it to 100 feet instead of 75, about 130 feet with a 13mm, and 200 feet with a 19mm on a 336 resolution. With a 640 resolution, you're able to clearly get much higher, up to around 275 feet with a 19mm, and still have the ability to identify a person on the ground. So then I took this information and I translated it to field of view. So these colors, the purple, pink, and orange, are showing different lens sizes and the maximum that you can fly, or the parameters that you could fly and still identify a person. So for the orange here, the highest that you could fly on a 336 looking straight down is about 140 feet, and that gives you the range that you would be able to get as far as field of view. So generally, at its maximum of each lens, you're able to get about 60 feet field of view for each lens. So that means that if you're trying to cover thousands of feet in looking for this object, it will take you more passes than it would for a higher resolution lens, or if you're looking at an angle. So yeah, you can see that it's almost 3 times as much to use a 640 resolution with a 9mm lens than it is working with a 336 resolution and a 9mm lens, as far as how much space you can cover and still identify a person looking straight down. Now, when we jump to working with an angle, you're able to get about double that when you're looking at a 30-degree angle versus looking straight down to identify a 2x2 or a person on the ground. and this is at its maximum. So the lower that you fly, the less field of view that you're going to get, or the less coverage. So you're going to be trading off the amount that's covered within the space for clarity of the image. And then at its very highest, a 9mm lens to identify a person at 100 feet AGL, you're able to get 250 feet within the image. So you could cover a lot more at any given time. This was super complicated for me to put together in words over a very brief webinar. So I apologize for that, but I do suggest that if you want to go into this further, shoot me an email. I'll send you the recorded version, and you can pause and look at these graphs yourself. I just wanted to give you some concepts of if you're a fire department or search and rescue provider, and you're wondering what camera should I get. If you're able to fly at 100 feet off the ground, and there's trees are not going to be a problem, you might get the 9mm, and then you're able to cover a lot more space at a given time. That's kind of what I was trying to illustrate here. So the question of where to buy FLIR products, if you already have a preferred distributor, definitely go through them. If they don't have FLIR products already, then something's wrong, and you should tell them to get in touch with me. But if you're wanting to get one of these systems and you don't have a dedicated dealer, shoot me an email, and I'll make an introduction to someone that either has the experience in the industry that you're working in, has an understanding of integration, get you to the right people that you could work with. And this is globally to make sure that you're having the best experience and you're able to use thermal imaging properly. If you want more training, the ITC, Infrared Training Center, that is owned by FLIR, we do have courses that are specific to small unmanned systems. They're only in North America right now. We should be branching into Europe and Asia in the near future, but these are the dates. The courses are just under $2,000, and if you want more information on that, I will copy and paste this link also in the chat, and you can check it out there. But these courses are really great. Those slides with the graphs like this is the kind of stuff that will go through there and be able to explain it a heck of a lot better than I can. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions at all, shoot me an email, randall.warnas@FLIR.com. I will answer every single email that comes through. I'll get you to the right person if you're wanting to buy a camera. Your feedback is hugely appreciated. And then also, if you're going to be in Dallas for Exponential, make sure you stop by the FLIR booth and come and say hello. I'm really interested in what people are doing within the industry, and I try to do everything I can to help that along. So before we get into questions, I do want to throw two more polls up. Just the first one, it won't hurt my feelings if you say no, but I was wondering if you found the information useful, even the smallest little bit of it. Are these webinars worth the time? Because it does take quite a bit of time for me to put these things together. It's difficult to translate information over a computer, but I do try my very best to give you something that you haven't seen before, or a different way to communicate to the people that you're working around why drones are important, why you want to get them, or why you use them, how you can use them. So I do appreciate the feedback, even if it's honest and brutal. If you shoot me an email and tell me ways that I can make this better, I really, really appreciate that. Cool. Most people, there's a few people that did not find this useful, but that's okay. Feelings unhurt. And also, I wanted to know what kind of topics that we could cover in the future that would be useful for you. So read through them, but basically how to do integration to get that last mile integration with the FLIR View Pro or a FLIR Duo. Yeah, I mean, you can read them, but just want to see where we could go next. Cool. Leave it up just for a few more seconds, then I'll go through questions. I hope that I have some. I do. Okay. All right, so thanks for responding on those. And also, again, thank you for joining. I'm going to go through a few questions. I don't know what time it is. We have 4 more minutes, so I'm going to go through these questions, and then if there is something that I can't answer, which is possible, I apologize, but I will get you an answer to every question that I receive. Okay, so, oops. I don't even know what's going on. I will leave it there. Okay. Has the webinar started? Yes, hopefully you guys could hear this. And that's why people are saying it wasn't useful, is because they couldn't hear anything. Okay, hello, pro. There's a lot of non-questions, so sit tight 1 second. Turn off the background music. If you guys were hearing background music, you shouldn't have. There was no music playing throughout the show or the presentation. Can FLIR image see through treetops in day and night, or only in open areas? So yes, the idea is that if the thermal image is not able to get that 10 by 10 cluster on a leaf or a branch or something like that, it would see through it as if it's not there. So if you have extremely dense foliage, then maybe you wouldn't be able to see through, but in general, yes, you can see through treetops and you are able to identify objects below, especially if you're looking for people. And it doesn't matter whether you're flying at in daytime or nighttime. The thermal imaging camera does not take into account visible light. Let's see. Can you discuss the use of thermal in Florida? We've experimented with ours. Hold on 1 second. Not able to. Okay, so you're not able to use your thermal imaging camera during the daytime because the temperature of the ground or the environment heats up so much from the sun. So yeah, there are some nuances or some tricks to the trade to make sure that you can use your thermal imaging camera under all circumstances, whether the weather or what time of day you're operating. So it is always best to operate thermal imaging cameras at either dawn or dusk. Night flights, I know, are restricted by the FAA, but if you could get those exemptions, that's a perfect time to use thermal imaging because you're not going to have that the extra heat generated by the sun. But depending on your application, we could talk about that more, Tom, but shoot me an email and let me know what you're using it for, and we could delve into it a bit further and see if we can adjust the way that you're using it so that you're able to get useful data. Okay. People helping me figure out what a train yard is, a shunting yard. Thanks for that. Got an email. There's really not a lot of questions, but I'm jumping through things. I was told I was going to have a bunch of people helping me go through these questions, but then they never showed up, so it's just me. Oh, my email address. Someone's asking for that. I'll post it up. Let me scroll through all these slides. Sit tight 1 second. But yeah, feel free to shoot me emails. I know that maybe just going through these one by one and the time is passed up may not be the best of use of your time, but shoot me an email. Happy to help and happy to answer any questions that you do have. I'll continue to keep answering these questions, but feel free to drop off as you see fit. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. Oh my goodness. Comments are coming in fast. Can I share the presentation? No, I can share the recording, but I can't share the slides themselves, so I apologize for that. Do you have an educational department to work with schools in teaching the use of UAS and thermal imaging? For sure we do educational outreach. If you shoot me an email, I'll get you in touch with the person that would be best suited for that. It is a different person for UAS versus like handheld thermal imaging, but I think that we would be happy to accommodate you. If you are sending me an email through the questions to send the video, send the recording of this presentation, if you could send me an email, because I don't know how the system will save these questions when I close out of it, so it might be best for you to shoot me an email, randall.warnas@FLIR.com. Thanks, Lori. There's so much kind words, but I'm trying to find questions. What I'll do is I'll just take all these questions. You guys can all take off. I will copy them into an email. I'll answer them one by one, and I'll send it out to everyone that was here. That might be the best use of your time, but I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to join and show the support. I'm not a thermal imaging expert. I'm still working through it, but I wanted to give you guys a good amount of information, show you different perspectives, something that you could share with people. So I appreciate your time. Hopefully the next one will be even better. But these questions, they're coming in at a rapid rate, and I think that we're well over the time. So I'll respond to those in an email, and please feel free to visit at Exponential in Dallas next week. Come say hello. I know that quite a few of you will be there. And if you are in Europe or Asia, I'll be out there sooner than later. Europe starting next Friday. So if there's anything I could do while I'm in your territory, let me know, and I'm happy to do it. But thanks again, everyone, for showing up. I'm going to close it out, but we'll talk again soon. Have a great day.